willing soul. What is that darkness in you holding me to? Stay with me now, I'll hold you. Walking in and out of our lives, ghostly bodies intertwined. I can see the signs, I can see it coming. I can feel the way, I can feel the way, I can feel the way. I can see the signs, I can see it coming. I can feel the way, I can feel the way, I can feel the way. I can see the signs, I can see it coming. I can feel the way, I can feel the way, I can feel the way. I can see the signs, I can see it coming. I can feel the way, I can feel the way, I can feel the way.
Chat, what's up? Happy Friday. Say what's up as you come in the chat. 9:54 p.m. late Friday stream. March 14th, 2025 on a Friday. Say what's up as you come in the chat. Alright guys, like I said, it was going to be a little different this week. The last 3 weeks have been trial and error for me, trying to figure out when my crowd is on. So I've gotten a lot of information over the past 3 weeks. So I think I'm done with trial and error. It can be tiring because it's like random. Like some people are like, you're posting kind of random. And then some people are like, it seems like you're getting later. And really what it was is just me trying to find the groove of what works best for me, right? So, this is gonna make it too bright. If this makes it too bright, I'm gonna turn it off. With that being said, here we are, guys, as promised. Daily stream, Friday night. Give me 1 second, chat. Okay? And yourself. Say what's up in the chat. Hit that like button for me, guys. Say where you watching from. So I think tonight it'll be a fairly fast stream. Normally I am on here for like an hour and a half. 1.2, not that that's long, but you know, it's Friday, so I'm still chilling with the wifey. I'm not going to be on here long. She gave me grace to be on here. Gene, what's up? How you doing, man? Thanks for stopping in. Guys, do me a favor, hit that like button for me. It takes the video far away. I appreciate you guys. It just takes 1 second. So, as always, guys, per the agenda, let me tell you what's on the menu tonight. We got Charlie Kirk. Shout out to Charlie Kirk. We like Charlie Kirk on this channel, right on the corner. One of the conservative leaning, I would say, but pretty conservative guy, who I think he's a very intelligent guy. You know, goes around the universities, talks to college students. He's been doing this for Trump since, I believe it's 2016, but you guys can fact check me on that. But I like Charlie Kirk. I've been watching him for a while. It says, Charlie Kirk explains why Trump tariff war will help Americans win. A lot of people are pretty upset about this whole tariff thing. We are now being told by the media that Trump has us in a tariff war. So Charlie Kirk takes the time to explain to us what a tariff means. I went over this in a couple of live streams prior. Learning about tariffs in econ class. I learned about this. I want to say freshman year of college it was, and then because of the type of social studies I was in, econ was in college, but social studies high school. I heard about tariffs in high school too, so I was aware of what they were. But I still think he makes a good. The way he breaks it down is good for somebody who's not really aware of what tariffs are at all. Then we're gonna jump over to Matt Moore's TV. Shout out to Matt. Like, we're always reacting to stuff by Matt. We do it often. He's a guy that I tend to like. Pretty conservative guy as well, but breaks down his media very well. Title is AOC and Schumer battle for leadership of the Democratic Party. So there are rumors that AOC feels that Chuck Schumer is a weak leader for the Democratic Party. A lot of people agree with her. Some attribute it to his age. A lot of people attribute AOC being a better leader to her youth and, her fiery personality. So technically speaking, I think they can both be right. I don't think Chuck Schumer is not qualified because he's old, but sometimes he could be Chuck. You could be a little bit argumentative, Chuck. That's all I'm going to say. And then we're going to jump over to Victor Davis Hanson over on the Daily Signal, one of my favorite hosts to watch over there. Titled, Yes, Mr. Khalil, Your Actions Have Consequences. So I believe his name is Muhammad Khalil. He is the protester from Columbus University. He's pro-Palestine protester, and he is currently in some trouble for apparently some things he's done in the past, but not, from what I understand, he does not have any priors. But this big protest on Columbia University campus has sparked a lot of outrage, and it seems like he was up for deportation, but a judge has blocked it. So I don't think he's going to get deported. It seems like the judge is not going to allow that. But at the same time, we have Marco Rubio not necessarily pushing it, but trying to explain to the American people that a visa is not citizenship and that it does not exactly guarantee any type of permanency. We reacted to that yesterday on a live. He hit a lot of great points. It's hard to argue back with him. It's a hard pill to swallow, but it's hard to argue back with him. And then we're going to jump over, switch gears a little bit, and we're going to react to a small, short clip where Hakeem Jeffries gets roasted by reporters and runs away on live TV. He's asked a very simple question about the unity within the Democratic Party. He just says the Democratic Party is very unified, and then yields his questions to his other two constituents, which I thought was very suspect. I was like, really, Hakeem? So a ranking member, the minority leader, and this is how you're going to answer the question. But to say the least, we all know that the Democrats have been a little bit out of it lately and outraged. So we got to give them some grace. So with that being said, welcome to Cozy Corner TV, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Kieran Smith. Call me Q, and we are on the corner. We on the corner, y'all. So first up on the menu, Charlie Kirk. We're going to look at what Charlie has to say to us about tariffs. Again, learned about tariffs in social studies, learned about tariffs in econ class. So was pretty aware of what they meant. Trump also did this during his first administration. It's not widely talked about, but we had historic tariffs on lots of different places during his first administration as well. But if you weren't paying attention to that first administration, you might not be aware of that. So let's jump in and see what Charlie Kirk has to explain to us about tariffs.
We are hearing this word thrown around a lot. Donald Trump is starting a trade war, is what we are being told. We're saying that it is making the economy go into a recession. But what exactly is a tariff? A tariff is a duty. It's a tax, in some sense, imposed by, of course, the government on importing or exporting of goods. It is used as a form of negotiation many times, but it's a way to try and bring both parties to the table. Now, we have tried unfettered free trade over the last 30 or 40 years. On paper, free trade with every country looks and sounds good. It looks and sounds good when we are able to say, you know what? There's no duties, there's no tariffs, there's no taxes. However, America has been largely too focused on the importation of goods into America not being tariffed. And far too often, we don't even ask the question, what about the products we make in our country that we want to import to other countries? So the game that was constituted, the deal that was structured, was the following. It was that we are going to become.
So right before Charlie gets into that, I think he makes a great point when he says, at some point we moved to the focus of, what we were going to get from other countries, what we were going to get imported to the United States, and not what we wanted to import. And it matters because at that point we were pretty much just buyers, right? Like, we're not makers in any way. We're not any type of manufacturers, industrializers. We're just buyers, like, for lack of better terms. We're just on the market pretty much just trading and buying. And we kind of got away from, or didn't even think about, because I know the last two administrations I didn't even hear this talked about, and I'm talking about the Biden administration and now before Trump got into office, nothing about tariffs as far as what's made in the United States. And that's why I know that we were getting our butts kicked when it came to this whole tariff game. And President Trump said it. So at first he uses the word stupid, which I don't like. I'll go on record to say that. But he says, he does retract it. He says, or maybe they just weren't business people. I'll go with the first line. I'll go with the latter, because that's what it was. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, they weren't business people, right? Trump and Elon, these guys are business guys. So they're going in and they're trying to make deals that they know will work out best for them. A lot of people are upset because, I like today when he had a conversation, he did a speech to the DOJ. We streamed that live over here, and he talked about the fact that I think eggs went down. He said 35% so far, right? Now, of course, his supporting party is going to clap and support that. Of course, the Democrats are going to be like, oh, that's nothing. That doesn't mean anything. But I've said this time and time again, like, eggs are not about to go back down to $1.99. It's just not going to happen. Now, is it possible, depending on where you buy your eggs from and what state you live in? Sure, it might be possible. Maybe a farmer's market might be cheaper. Probably not. But what I'm saying is that it's not going to go back down to the price that they're hoping for. Like, they want Trump to go in office, and they want to see this stuff drop down to, like, $2, $3, and it's like, dude, it's not gonna happen. This is the reason why cigarettes never went back to like $2.50 a pack. That's not how inflation works. Once it's inflated, but then the country balances itself back out, and then jobs, like, this is initially how it should work. The middle class is working, they're making money. The country balances itself back out, and then people are able to afford things where they are. This is the reason why cigarettes never went back down to $2-3, because people have asked that question, and that's just not how economic inflation works. So I think he makes a great point when he says we got away from, what do we want to be imported to other countries? And that's the reason why tariffs weren't being paid attention to. Trump, however, is very much interested in what's being made in the United States, and he wants to be able to charge for it, and rightfully so. Those of us that do not understand tariffs don't understand that we've been getting our butt kicked in the tariff game historically for a long time. President Trump came in and didn't like it the first time and did something about it, but it wasn't widely talked about, because why would the media do that? And they hate tariffs and they don't understand them. And then this time around, because he pretty much ran the campaign like that, that's all people heard. And now that they see, I even hear it on the radio. They're like, come buy this and come get that before all these tariffs kick in. And I'm like, dude, the scare factor is pretty grotesque at this point.
The deal that was structured was the following. It was that we are going to become a purchaser of other countries' goods, and we will become a service economy. Why do we need to go make stuff with our hands? We're better than that. We're just going to go close down all the factories in Allentown. We're going to go close down the factories in Marshallton, Iowa. We don't need to be making stuff. We're more elevated than that. We will have an information economy. And we all know how that works. Those very decisions that were made by the American corporate ruling class led to the rise and the ascension of Donald Trump. It led to the explosion of the MAGA movement. Now, we are in a three-dimensional trade war right now. President Trump is forcing the issue. President Trump very well could have avoided this. The American people voted for tariffs, they voted for stricter trade measures, and he very well could have avoided this. And understand that the menace of the Chinese Communist Party was made possible because of our overindulgence in internationalist trade policies. Americans like the idea of living in a country that makes things again. Not only do we want to make America great again, we want to make America make things again. You are not a country if you import everything made overseas. You are nothing more than a trading colony. You're not a country. President Trump had the Irish Prime Minister. Now, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation. There's actually a very interesting title to the Irish Prime Minister. Blake can put the name in the chat. It's like Tegasech or something is the actual term for the Prime Minister of Ireland. I learned that. I didn't know that. But this is President Trump going back and forth with the Irish leader. Thank you. The Taoiseach, whatever. President Trump says that he will impose additional tariffs on the EU to respond to their retaliatory tariffs. The reporter then responds and says, well, what will be the retaliation? Listen carefully. This is President Trump in the Oval Office going back and forth with the reporter. What cut is this? I'm trying to pinpoint this. Going back and forth with this reporter, saying, I don't blame Ireland for what they have done. I don't blame the Irish government for putting duties on our country.
Yeah.
Play cut 131, please.
So right before we go into this cut where President Trump is talking to the Prime Minister of Ireland, we did get a chance to live stream that, so you guys go check that out. It's just them in the Oval Office. I'm actually not live streaming in this format. I'm off a streaming software I'm off a streaming software, so it actually looks just like this on the computer. But you guys go check that out. I actually got a chance to catch that whole conversation live. And Charlie Kirk is right. President Trump says he's not mad at the Prime Minister of Ireland for doing what they did. It's funny because he's so honest. Like one of the reporters say, do you feel like Ireland is ripping the United States off? And President Trump is like, well, yeah, this is not really a secret. And he's brutally honest about this stuff, but nonetheless, he tells the press that he's not mad at Ireland for doing what they did. He's more upset because of the administration that we had, and it shouldn't have been allowed to happen. That's just his biggest thing there. He can see that these people did not understand tariffs and what they were doing, and he shouldn't be allowed to happen now. As far as the EU and their retaliatory tariff, I talked about this a little bit yesterday. I don't remember if I reacted to a small video on there. And I'm not going to go back and check because honestly, I don't have a problem with reacting to something twice or bringing it up again on here for you guys, so I'll do that. But there was a video where it was specifically talking about the EU retaliatory tariff. And we know that President Trump, he chose April 2nd, and he said it's because he's skeptical, which I thought was hilarious. But he said April 2nd, the global tariffs will go into effect. Okay, so because of these global tariffs, so it wasn't a special tariff or an extra tariff he gave EU, the global tariffs go into effect. EU produces a retaliatory tariff to the United States because they don't like what's going on. And then President Trump comes back and he says, listen, if the EU doesn't drop these 25% retaliatory tariffs immediately, then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to put a 200% retaliatory tariff on all alcohol or all wine and everything that's coming from Europe, right? So this is, I understand why the media is calling it a trade war, but they're also hyping it up in a way where, it's going to make people nervous and somewhat rightfully so, but really for no reason. Like Trump is saying this, he's like, this stuff should have never been allowed to happen. So he's just trying to rectify things that shouldn't have took place really in the first place. And he's really just getting a whole bunch of flack about it.
Before tariffs on the EU, will you respond to their retaliation?
Of course I'm going to respond.
You will
The
retaliate.
problem is our country didn't respond. Look, the EU was set up in order to take advantage of the United States.
Including Ireland? Is Ireland taking advantage of the US?
Of course they are. I have great respect for Ireland.
I love it because the reporter says, and what about Ireland? Is Ireland taking advantage of the U.S.? And Trump says, of course they are. Like, he says, but I have respect for him. And this is because of the last administration.
What they did, and they should have done just what they did, but the United States shouldn't have let it happen. We had stupid leaders. We had leaders that didn't have a clue, or let's say they weren't business people, but they didn't have a clue what was happening, and all of a sudden Ireland has, our farmers.
That's him talking to the Taoiseach. By the way, you can see how poorly I pronounced it. The Taoiseach, the leader of Ireland. Other countries can tariff the importation of American goods, but we don't tariff the importation of their goods. Now, on the surface, we thought we were getting the better end of the deal. We said, oh my goodness, we get all of these cheap products. We get Mercedes-Benzes, we get Toyotas, we get Samsungs. But over time, you could only go to the well so many times. You could only go to the cheap money spigot so often. And the more that you start to get high on the unlimited flow of cheap money, the bill comes due. And the bill has come due, everybody, with the rise of the Chinese Communist Party and our inability to make critical manufacturing. Peter Navarro had an amazing appearance on Jesse Waters, and I want to break this down. When he started talking about the details of the different tariffs that are put on American goods. Let's play cut 134, please.
Now, there was a reason, Jesse, a reason why tariffs didn't cause a whiff of inflation during the first term. We had historic tariffs on China, we had steel and aluminum tariffs, we had solar, we had dishwashing, we had these beautiful tariffs bringing in billions of dollars. We had price stability and growth, and I bear to believe, Jesse, we are going to get the best tax cut in history, paid for in large part by tariff revenues from around the world, taken, Jesse, from the people who've been cheating us around the world with higher tariffs and higher non-tariff barriers. It's a beautiful, bullish scenario. We're bridging.
So Peter Navarro says that what's going to end up happening is that the American people are going to end up getting the most beautiful tax, the most beautiful tax break. And the reason why this is going to happen is because it's going to get paid for by the tariffs that are going to go against people that have been taking from people in the United States. A lot of people can't wrap their minds around this when it comes to how this tariff thing works. But the reason why it gets back from people who've been stealing, because someone might say, well, why are you using the term stealing? Well, you know, Trump might be being just aggressive with his terminology, which we know President Trump usually is. But he's coming from it from a business perspective, and he's saying, listen, if you see someone charging you a tariff, you know, for your goods, and you're not going to do the same reciprocal, like, of course you're going to lose money. Of course, in the end, you're going to be the one to lose. This is why he feels like the United States has been stolen from. Because when these countries were putting these large tariffs on us, right, namely India being one of... President Trump says one of the worst. I think that they're the country that charges us the most in tariffs, but I always say you guys can fact check me on that, because I know just in Japan alone, it's already a 700% tariff just for rice. So I already know, like, that's already a ridiculous tariff, and that's just one item. There are already countries that hit the United States for 100%, 150%, 500% tariffs. Some of you guys have never heard this number, and that's because when we have administrations in, like the Biden administration and Obama's administration, right, they're not coming and they're not telling the American people how much the United States is being charged for things. They're thinking, we can pay for it, we're getting it the cheaper way. And it's like, Charlie Kirk's about to talk about it in a second, but he's going to talk about how, you know, in America, we thought that it would be good to just kind of close everything down. And he goes to, I believe it's a clip from 1993 where the reporters in Bensalem, Pennsylvania, and they're closing down, you know, some of the most prominent power plants in the area because they're shipping everything overseas, you know, and you see the workers in the local areas, the workers who have been at the company a long time, you see they're just so dejected, and they're like, you know, you can't trust a company because they treat you like a number. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, they was even saying that about companies in 93. It's been a long time. So let's just let's keep listening to Peter Navarro here. I just thought he made a great point, because he says, like, the American people are going to get the best tax break. You know, so many people, like, the billionaires are going to get a tax break. You know, Elon never said that. Trump never said that. And I know people are going to say, well, of course they're not going to go on TV and say that, Q. No, Donald Trump's pretty arrogant enough. He can be, right, that he would say it if that's what he felt like. But that's not his goal. He wants the American people to see some of this money come back to them. And Peter Navarro's good at explaining it because he says this is going to happen by Trump imposing these tariffs in all of these countries that have been stealing from America. All of this money is going to flow in and it's going to come into America. And then this is when the American people will start to see these beautiful tax rates, these beautiful tax breaks, and receive their money. So this takes time, right? The last administration had 4 years to kind of fudge things up. President Trump hasn't even been in 4 months. So we have to give these things time.
In the world with higher tariffs and higher non-tariff barriers. It's a beautiful, bullish scenario. We're bridging from Bidenomics to the bullishness of Trumponomics.
And what you see in the markets could be best described as a little bit of expulsion. I don't want to use too graphic language, but you know it if you get the stomach flu or the norovirus. Sometimes your body needs to expel some of the bad.
Yep.
This is going to be a little bit of a transition phase. I don't like to use the word transitory too much because the other administration butchered it. But President Trump could easily not do this. Understand the decision in front of President Trump. President Trump very easily could have said, no tariffs, keep the market untouched, let the quote-unquote good times roll. And the American middle class suffers. You do not have a nation, you do not have a country, you do not have a social contract or social compact if you do not have a robust middle class.
A thriving working middle class, yes.
A middle class is one that owns property, that pays your taxes, that makes your goods and services. It is so tempting to be nothing but a service economy, but that has been the 1% that has done so well over the last 40 to 50 years. Peter Navarro continues. Play cut 133.
We got the 3D, three-dimensional war on inflation, right? It's drill, baby, drill. Think about just going from $80 barrel of oil down to 50. You almost solved the whole thing right there. But then you got deregulation and you got the Doge effect, which is basically taking out waste, fraud, and abuse, reducing up.
So Peter Navarro, you hear him say drill, baby, drill, and he says, he's telling Jesse Waters, just think about the impact of oil going from $80 a barrel down to 50. He's like, you take care of half of the debt just doing something like that. He's like, and then that doesn't even take into consideration the Doge efforts and where all of these cuts are being made. So he's basically breaking it down to Jesse how these are the ways that President Trump plans to pay for the things that he wants to do for the American people, not by just printing money and doing it, but actually by putting a plan into action.
Down to 50. You almost solved the whole thing right there. But then you got deregulation and you got the Doge effect, which is basically taking out waste, fraud, and abuse, reducing our government debt. What does that do? That reduces, Jesse, mortgage rates and interest rates, which helps stimulate the home market and allows consumers not to have that overhang of debt.
Understand this. What President Trump is doing, write this down, text to your friends, commit it to memory. What President Trump is doing is completely reorganizing the philosophical, the political, the geopolitical, and the moral posture of the federal government. Economically. It's a big deal. It's going to take a little bit of a process, but coming out of it will become the strongest, most robust, long-lasting American economy in history. Did you know that over 85% of grass-fed beef in stores is imported? Thanks to a loophole, foreign meat can be labeled product of explain the birth, the foundation. Pulled out that I said, I've got to play this on the show. If you want to explain the birth, the foundation, the catalyst of the MAGA movement, this clip summarizes better than almost any. This sort of behavior is the genesis of the populist movement. To put this in perspective, this clip happened before I was born. This is from November of 1992. I was born in October of 1993. Before I was even born. This is a reporter that went to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and was summarizing what we were just describing. So basically, here's what happened. Is a bunch of smart guys like Mitt Romney and the consultant class, the ruling class, they all got their practitioner master's degrees from Harvard. And what they were told is the most important thing is maximizing profit. They were told the most important thing was maximizing the dollar. You see, but that's not the only political question. That's the only economic question. But when the political question, you must balance human happiness, community, family, crime, displacement. But if you only ask the economic maximalization question, especially those that have no interest in the well-being of the body politic of the nation or in the citizenry, you get decisions like this. So you go to a place like Harvard and you get a master's degree from the Harvard Business School. And the Harvard Business School will tell you it makes sense to shut down the mill because they're unionized, it takes too long, they're not as efficient. So shut down the mill in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, because let's just say a thing of steel, let's just use round numbers, costs you $100. And in China, you can get it for $60. And yes, you gotta ship it, but there'll be no tariff. That's the key, everybody. That's the kicker. If the American government would have said, actually, we're gonna put a 10% tariff on, the consultant class like Mitt Romney and all the Bain Capital cabal, they never would have been able to do this. This example right here happened tens of thousands of times. City by city, neighborhood by neighborhood, block by block. And this eventually led to, first, Ross Perot. Ross Perot was the first one to run under this energy. He was the first one to recognize this.
Why don't you order apartment?
This happened tens of thousands of times of plants closing, and there were millions of people who lost their jobs. So I want you to multiply what you were about to see.
Now, before Charlie plays this clip, in case you guys are wondering, he's not just, coming at the Harvard Business Law School and saying, like, these guys don't know what they're talking about. Dude, that magnet is driving me crazy. He's not just coming at the Harvard Law School and saying, these guys don't know what they're talking about. He's saying that these guys come with the mindset, and that when they when they're talking to their constituents, or let's say they're bringing up their mentees, or these guys are learning and they're young and they're just getting in the game, they'll tell them, of course, it makes sense to close the mill because it's unionized, it's slow, it takes too long. He's given all great examples of why a businessman would say, this is not something that we need, right? So then someone might say, well, why is it that President Trump feels like we need to make things in America if the Harvard Business Law School would say to just sell it? Well, it's to what Charlie's saying when he mentions like the government cabal, right? Which I love that term because it instantly makes me think about, I don't know if you guys ever watched the TV show Blacklist. It's on Netflix now. But I mean, it's basically about government corruption. There's a lot of crazy stuff that goes on there. And he's saying like these guys are trained to think like that. And ultimately, this happened so many times. He said thousands and thousands of times, town to town to town, city to city, that all these people lost their jobs. And this is what now makes the United States look the way it looks now, because we've turned into a country that just trades or that just purchases. We're no longer the country that people are trying to get things that we manufacture and get things that we make, because these guys that come from the Harvard Business Law School, right, and they teach their constituents, the Democrats for the most part, right, but we'll say the hard leftists, that yeah, this is what you do. You close down factories, you close down refineries and plants, and you just ship it overseas because we get it for a cheaper price. And then we end up being a very weak economy, almost to the point where we're not going to exist, because you can't exist like that. You have to have a thriving, working, successful middle class. And if all you're doing is just buying, and no one's ever getting anything from you, or you're never selling, well, your demise is in the near future.
Incredibly powerful piece of tape. Credit to the Jesse Waters production team for finding it. Commit this one to memory. This here is what led us to this moment. And what President Trump is doing is simply fixing what happened before I was even born. And now President Trump is getting blamed by that for the media. He's fixing what happened in this tape. The human tragedy is unfathomable. It was way too quick of a deindustrialization, and drugs came in, and opioids came in, and crime came in, unemployment came in, and misery came in, and suicide came in. Play cut 141.
For ages, hot molten steel has been the lifeblood of Johnstown, vigorously pumping dollars and jobs through the city's veins. But now the pulse of the community is in cardiac arrest. Bethlehem officials aren't making any more comments than what's contained in this press release. They're sorry, but it's simply not cost effective to run the mill any longer.
It does hurt, and there's a dramatic spin-off that's going to come from that, and there's going to be a lot of problems that have to be solved.
In part.
So here's what the news clip says. It actually says Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, November 1992. Jobs got shipped and towns got crushed.
And there's going to be a lot of problems that have to be solved.
In part, Bethlehem cites fierce foreign competition and the national economy for their demise. For some Bethlehem employees, it's hard to look past the shocking news.
Don't rely on a corporation that don't want you, in a sense. They don't care, you know. You're already a number.
You know who that guy is right now? 30 years later? That guy is the guy at the side of the street with the MAGA flag that sits at Bethlehem, Pennsylvania for 3 hours a day. You that guy that just showed on the piece of tape there? That's the guy that waited 6 hours to go see President Trump speak at a MAGA rally. Now, I'm of course exaggerating. I don't know who this man is. I'm saying the archetype of who this person is. That guy, whomever, I don't even know if he's still living, but he's a younger person in this. Or he might have died of heart disease and a broken heart, divorced and poor, because we decided
to take his job,
to ship the factory overseas.
Yeah. Damn.
We broke the social compact. We did that. And understand, just remember this. It is the experts who did this. It is the same type of experts that told us 6 feet to sow this bread, the same types of experts that came in all in the name of an abstraction called free trade, free trade, free trade. On certain things, of course, if we can have reciprocal free trade, but it was a neoliberal abstraction.
Yeah.
And what did it get us? Got us communities that looked like Gaza. And a lot of people suffering. And also, the rise of the MAGA movement.
Yeah. I can't disagree with Charlie there too much. And you know, some people might, but to his point, that is what birthed the MAGA movement. Now, when he's talking about that gentleman who's saying, you know, you can't, you know, trust jobs that don't really want you and they treat you like a number, he's saying that because that is the type of guy that voted for Trump this type of round. It was the working class. This is part of the reason why the Democrats are having such a hard time finding a new candidate, because they can't find anybody who resonates with the working class. This is the class that Trump pretty much won, right? Because when we see this gentleman in this last clip with Charlie Kirk, and he's talking about, you know, his job leaving, and Charlie's, of course, being a little facetious there and saying maybe he died of a broken heart. Well, maybe he did. You don't know what his life was like. That job was everything to those people. Those mills, those factories, they were everything to those people. They were paying for kids' colleges, mortgages, right? Hospital bills, car notes. So, you know, you just up and you say, hey, we're moving the factory because we have a cheaper price that we're going to do it at. I agree with Charlie Kirk. Some things, sure, if it could be reciprocal free trade, but it usually wasn't like that. It was always an unfair deal. And for the most part, when we were under Democratic administrations, they did nothing about it. So, like he said, you can only go to the cheap money spigot so many times before the bill is due. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is where we find ourselves at today, with the media promoting to us that President Trump has started a trade war, right? He's not. What he did is what Charlie Kirk said. He has not started a trade war. He's trying to fix what started in 1992, when you had people in office that said, yeah, let's just ship everything away because it's cheaper to do that instead of leaving it in the United States. Now Donald Trump's like, no, let's bring everything back because the American people deserve it. So, going over to Matt Moore's TV, ladies and gentlemen, we come here often. Matt does a great job at covering conservative, he does liberal too, but conservative leaning content. And he has today AOC and Schumer battle leadership of the Democratic Party. Rumors are flying that they're not happy with one another. They're kind of battling for leadership positions. I can't see that. I necessarily see this happening because we're in March. So maybe this was in January, if not December. But just a couple months ago, AOC lost her race to ranking member O'Connelly, right? Jerry O'Connelly, I believe his name is, and he is 76 years old. Not that that matters, but this threw the younger Democrats in the Democratic Party into a spiral because it made them all feel like there's no hope for us, right? Like the OGs are not letting us come in and do anything. They all want to maintain their seats. And yes, on the Democratic side, they have some of the oldest members that have been in Congress today. So let's see what Matt has to say about what's going on between Schumer and AOC in the Democratic Party.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, as of yesterday evening, Chuck Schumer has officially caved. President Trump has won, the government shutdown has been averted, and the Democrats are completely humiliated. But folks, not only are the Democrats humiliated, Chuck Schumer's decision to surrender to President Trump has actually sparked a full-blown mutiny inside of the Democratic Party. Now, we're going to break all of that down later in the video, but first, let's talk about everything that just happened. Over the last couple days, Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer was talking a pretty big game, saying that if Trump didn't agree to his demands, he would shut down the government alongside his fellow Democrats. Not very democratic, is it? Shutting down the government when you don't get your way and subverting the will of the American people. But you know what, folks? After all of that big talk, Chuck Schumer folded. He completely caved in to President Trump. And so today, we're going to talk about why all of this happened and also what all of this means as we move forward. But first, I want you to take a listen to what Chuck Schumer had to say about all of this.
Leads us to a decision. And it's not really a decision, it's a Hobson's choice. Either proceed with the bill before us or risk Donald Trump throwing America into the chaos of a shutdown. This, in my view, is no choice at all. While the CR bill is very bad, the potential for a shutdown has consequences for America that are much, much worse. For sure, the Republican bill is a terrible option. It is not a clean CR. It is deeply partisan. It doesn't address far too many of this country's needs. But I believe allowing Donald Trump to take even much more power via a government shutdown is a far worse option. And before I explain why, let me be clear about one thing. No one on my side of the aisle wants a government shutdown. Members who support this CR do not want a government shutdown. Members who oppose this CR do not want a government shutdown.
Now, folks, let's make something transparently clear here. Pretty much every single thing he just said is a total lie. He didn't back down on the government shutdown because he cares about America. No, he backed down because he realized that if a shutdown happened, America would blame him and side with President Trump.
Now, that's true because March 12th, we have Chuck Schumer making an announcement that the GOP does not have enough votes to pass the bill. He was very proud of this mention. He said they do not have enough votes. You need 60 votes to pass this. They have 53, so they would need about 8 Democrats to help them get this vote passed. And I just thought it was hilarious because he seemed very prideful about this. And then the next day, March 13th, which was yesterday, I covered in a live where Chuck Schumer did a total about face of 180. And he's like, it's bad for the government to be shut down. Worst of all, if we do that, things go into, let's say, a stagnant status, and that President Trump doesn't have to guarantee anybody to come back to work. As a matter of fact, things can stay like that for some time. So as I'm listening to him yesterday, I talked about this on the live. I said, it sounds like, okay, so either Chucky got paid or it sounds like he's afraid, because we know that Jasmine Crockett, and I mentioned this as well, earlier had said that she thought even her own job was on the line. And she talked about why the Democrats should shut down the government, because at least that they would still have their jobs. She said we wouldn't be getting paid, but we would get our back pay, and at least we would still have our job. And I'm like, wow, this sounds really crazy. It sounds like AOC feels like Chuck Schumer's weak. Chuck Schumer feels like, you know, he has to, he feels like he has to give in some way, some shape or form, because he knows that the way the Republicans set it up, if the Democrats did not vote in favor and then the government got shut down, everyone would blame the Democrats. Now, I think Chuck Schumer started to actually catch on to this. And for a second, I'm like, yay, Democrats, you're finally paying attention. Right? But they also have a clip of the Democrats, and I believe this is under the Biden administration, where you have an amalgamation of about probably, I don't know how many of them, just one after another. Government shutdown's bad. We can't ever let the government shut down. There's under no circumstances should the government be shut down. But we've just watched them this last week proudly talk about the government being shut down. So they changed their tune, and I think it was because the way the Republicans set it up. The Democrats kept saying, if there's a government shutdown, that has nothing to do with us. We don't have the power to shut down the government. That's the Republicans. And now the Republicans set it up to the point where it's like, listen, all we need is for some of our Democratic friends to come on this side and have some common sense, and then the bill could be passed. So we saw Chuck change his tune yesterday.
In fact, as some of you might have noticed, for the last 2 days, Schumer shutdown was trending on pretty much every single social media platform. Americans knew exactly what was happening. Chuck Schumer and the Democrats were threatening to shut down the government just to stop Donald Trump. And folks, let's be honest here for a second. The Democrats can't really afford to lose any more support right now.
Nope.
As it stands right now, the Democrats have an absolutely embarrassing national approval rating of 21%.
21.
But you know what? You guys are going to absolutely love this next thing that I have to show you. You see, just yesterday evening, after calling off the government shutdown, Chuck Schumer actually snapped in a fit of rage. He had an absolute outburst on live TV. But before we take a look at that, I want to say real quick that if you guys enjoy the daily news coverage, please consider subscribing to the channel. It really does help a lot with my daily struggle against the YouTube algorithm. Also, I figure I should apologize to you guys. You see, I'm super sick right now, and I know my voice sounds terrible. But okay, with all of that being said, let's take a look at Chuck Schumer's epic meltdown.
To have the conflict on the best ground we have summed up in a sentence that they're making the middle class pay for tax cuts for billionaires, it's much, much better not to be in the middle of a shutdown, which to divert people from the number one issue we have against these bastards, these people, which is not only all these cuts, but they're ruining democracy.
These bastards are ruining democracy, says.
See, I just don't. That was distasteful, Chucky, because President Trump is your president too, even though you're a Democrat. This is what I'm talking about with the Democrats. That was distasteful, Chucky.
Chuck Schumer. Guys, let's do a quick recap here. Just 2 months ago, the American people voted to give Republicans the control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency. President Trump won in a massive electoral college landslide, and he became the first Republican to win the popular vote in 20 years. And on top of all of that, right now, the Democrats have their lowest national approval ratings of all time at 21%. Meanwhile, President Trump has his highest ratings of all time, 53%.
And they were actually at 18%. It actually increased. So, I mean, yay, Democrats, 3%. Still their worst historically.
So you tell me, Chuck, who exactly is ruining democracy here with all of this talk of a government shutdown? Maybe Chuck Schumer didn't get the memo, but America has collectively chosen to make America great again. And guess what, Chuck? Your input is no longer needed. The country has decided we are moving full steam ahead with the America First agenda, despite how much the Democrats and cronies like Chuck Schumer cry and scream about it. And you know what? Let's just be honest for a second. This is all getting a little bit pathetic. Right now, the only plan the Democrats have is to try to undermine every single thing that President Trump does. Seriously, that's the only strategy that they have right now. But here's the problem with that strategy. Trump's ratings are so high that trying to sabotage him is actually just a losing battle.
Yeah.
Because here's the reality, the majority of Americans actually want Trump to be successful. The majority of Americans support President Trump. So unless the Democrats can actually come up with a real platform that benefits everyday Americans, you know what? They better get used to having that 21% approval rating. So folks, regarding Chuck Schumer, here's the real takeaway. If the Democrats thought that they could get away with shutting down the government to sabotage Trump, they would be doing it right now. The only reason they called off the shutdown is because the entire country saw right through their entire plan. We all saw immediately exactly what the Democrats were up to here, and we were not about to let them get away with it. And so the second Chuck Schumer realized that Americans would hold him and the Democrats accountable as opposed to blaming President Trump for the shutdown, that's when he caved. They didn't have a sudden moment of clarity. No, they realized that America was sick of their nonsense.
Yeah.
But folks, as I said earlier, the fallout from all of this is just getting started. You see, right now, multiple high-profile Democrats are actually revolting against Chuck Schumer's decision to back down to President Trump, saying he's too weak to lead the Democratic Party. And who's leading the charge? You guessed it, none other than Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Take a look at this.
You just talked about the strength of your leadership. Chuck Schumer just said that he's going to vote for cloture. Not only the Democrats can do it, but he's going to participate in it. Does that mean that you think he's a weak Senate leader?
I think that that would be a mistake. But we have time between now and tomorrow, and I hope that individuals that are considering that reconsider it. I genuinely do. I don't think it's what New Yorkers want. I don't think it's what the country wants.
See, this is where this is troubling for me because, and again, like you have plenty of people on the left and on the Democratic side that say AOC is like, a great representative. But sometimes, like certain things, I just don't know. Like when she says, like, I don't think this is what New Yorkers would want. I don't see how New Yorkers would want the government to be shut down. Like there's no one in any state. I don't see why anyone in any state would necessarily want that, especially seeing the way that President Trump has been handling things in his first couple days in the White House. Some people are really curious to see what does this look like by the end of the year? What does this look like by the beginning of next year? So, the fact, I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit troubled because I can obviously tell that she would have been okay with the government shutting down. And I'm just like, man, really? Come on, AOC.
This is generally not about Democrats or Republicans. This is about deep cuts to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. This is about the evisceration of the federal government. This is about codifying the looting that is happening at the behest of Elon Musk in order to pay for his tax breaks for billionaires. And we have a responsibility to stand up for it. That is why people elected us, and that is our responsibility to them right now.
So folks, of course, everything she just said is absolutely moronic, but there you have it. Right now, AOC is forming a faction of radical progressives inside of the Democratic Party to work independently of Chuck Schumer's leadership.
Wow.
You see, for radical progressives like AOC, Chuck Schumer just isn't progressive enough.
Up for it. That is why people elected us.
Right now, AOC is forming a faction of radical progressives inside of the Democratic Party to work independently of Chuck Schumer's leadership.
That's crazy. So if she's forming a couple of, it's things like that. So basically a house divided against itself, like a house fighting within itself. So why would she take a couple of people to work separately from Chuck Schumer's leadership? It's like, dude, even if you don't like his leadership, he's still a ranking member, right? He's still you guys' leader until you replace him with somebody else. So, and then now the American people get to see that. They get to see, oh, this person and this person within the Democratic Party aren't getting along. So, there goes those Democrats still in disarray. And it's just like I said, again, it's not about, one great point is it's not about Democrat or Republican. It's like you vote for whoever you want to vote for. But like, as I always say on this channel, we don't go to the polls ignorant, right? Do your research. And this is a problem for me. Like being okay with the government shutdown, getting some people to go off to the side and work separately from your leaders' leadership. It just doesn't seem like very smart moves to me.
You see, for radical progressives like AOC, Chuck Schumer just isn't progressive enough. He still has some amount of sanity left, which means as far as AOC is concerned, he's got to be pushed out. And folks, here's the real crazy thing about all of this. You see, Chuck Schumer is a 74-year-old senator from New York State, while AOC is a 35-year-old House rep from also New York State. And so you just know that right now, AOC is eyeing Chuck Schumer's seat in the Senate, like right now I am eyeing a cough drop. But folks, here's the real takeaway. All of this is just further proof that right now the Democratic Party is in complete and total shambles. Right now, the Democrats have no plan, and very clearly right now, they have no leader. But now, folks, before I wrap up with today's video, I want to say real quick that I've actually got it.
I think Matt makes a great point. You guys can go ahead and check this channel. I believe this is his Facebook page.
Ahead and made a community Facebook page where I'll be posting additional news and updates as it relates to all of this stuff. So if you guys use Facebook, check out that pinned comment down below and give that page a follow. But everyone, that is going to be a wrap for today's video.
I think he makes a great point. You know, when he says that, you know, this fight, this back and forth just proves that the Democratic Party is in disarray. That's exactly what it proves. You know, I'm for America, like the country itself, right? I've served the country. So it's going to be hard for me to just say, yeah, I'm going to lean this way, or I'm just going to lean this one way. I do my research and I vote for who I feel comfortable voting for at the time, depending on what they stand for, how they align with me. But I've been around I've been around often situations where people are extremely ignorant to the two candidates, and instead of making sure that they have knowledge, that they do their research, they don't even bother. It's just, I've always voted Democrat, so I'm gonna go that way. I've always voted Republican, so I'm gonna go that way. I mentioned this on the channel before. When you fight for your country, you fight for the entire country, not just one side. No one's ever fighting for just one race or one political party. We fight for the entire country, just like President Trump as the entire country's president, not just the president of the conservatives or the Republican Party. This has been a little bothersome for me when it comes to the Democrats, because sometimes I feel like they think like that. So switching gears a little bit, we're going to go over to Victor Davis Hanson over on the Daily Wire. He's talking about Mr. Muhammad, I don't want to pronounce his name. I know I had it. Where is it? Muhammad Khalil. Yeah, so Muhammad Khalil, he is the student from Columbia University, and he was the one who was a part of the pro-Palestine protests, who is also a student on a visa, and now because of his protests and apparently some priors that have been talked about, but none set in stone, I guess. No, like, violent criminal charges or nothing that has stuck to him. But since the pro-Palestinian protests, he has drawn the attention of the Trump administration, and now there has been some talks about deportation. I said this earlier on the live. I believe a judge blocked it. So Mr. Khalil will not be getting deported. I'm not sure if he will or he won't, but Marco Rubio went on the record yesterday to explain to us that visas are not permanent and they are not citizenship, and that a country, the United States namely, has the right to revoke one if a president comes and acts in such a way. So your actions have consequences, whether you're a citizen or not. So let's see what Mr. Hanson's talking about.
In the news about Mahmoud Khalil. He's a former Columbia University student who was here on a student visa and then has married an American citizen and has recalibrated his visa to a green card. He's an Algerian citizen who grew up in Syria and Palestine. Mr. Khalil, as the spokesman for Columbia University Apartheid Divest, has on numerous occasions supported groups that committed vandalism, that harassed Jews, and most importantly have called for the destruction of Western civilization and glorified a group that is designated by the U.S. State Department as a terrorist group. So the question is this. Hello, this This is Victor Davis Hansen for the Daily Signal. There's been a lot of frenzy in the news about the detention of Mahmoud Khalil. He's a former Columbia University student who was here on a student visa and then has married an American citizen and has recalibrated his visa to a green card. He's an Algerian citizen who grew up in Syria and Palestine, and he's the spokesman for something at Columbia University called the Columbia University Apartheid Divest, in which it suggests that no university should allow any investments with the so-called criminal state, apartheid state, as they call it, of Israel. Now, he was deported because his activity is in contrast to what the State Department guidelines suggest, and that is simply that they do not want to issue visas, whether green cards or student visas or other sort of visas, to people whose activity is in contrast or against the interest of the United States foreign policy.
Yep.
As I'm speaking, Hamas, who engineered the October 7th, 2023 massacre, still holds 5 American citizens as hostages. They will not release them, apparently. They're on record for the last 25 years as a State Department designated terrorist organization. So the question is it fair for Mr. Khalil to go back to his home and lose his green card? The left and many on the libertarian right said this is a free speech issue. He can say whatever he wants. Yes, he was the spokesman for the Columbia University Apartheid Divest group. So what? He can say that he doesn't like Israel, that October 7th was a glorious occasion. And if you look at the literature of his organization, it's very clear that they have called October 7th a wonderful event, and B, in the past they've called for the eradication and destruction of Western civilization. Now, he may deny that, but that's what his organization has done. The president of Barnard University, the sister campus of Columbia University, about a week ago wrote an op-ed blasting Mr. Khalil's organization and said that they were responsible. That is, again, the Columbia University Apartheid Divest, of which he is their, I guess, official spokesman and negotiator, had caused over $30,000 of damage, vandalism to the Columbia-Barnard campus. They have on 2 occasions forcibly entered halls on the university campus and refused to leave. They have illegally encamped on campus grounds, refused to leave, and he was the negotiator. So the question is this, it's very simple. Does he have a right as a resident to speak and do whatever he wants? As long as it's not criminal, he does. Does the State Department have a right to consider whether to issue a visa or a renewal of this visa or a cancel visa, depending on whether the recipient is doing things in the interest of the United States, or I shouldn't say, is doing things contrary to the United States? And the answer is absolutely. Both sides are right. In other words, Marco Rubio and his State Department are just saying this. We issue thousands of visas to all sorts of people who say all sorts of things, and that's perfectly fine. Obnoxious, obscene, whatever they want to say under the First Amendment, because our courts have ruled that those who are residing in the United States have the same rights of free speech. However, we don't have to let people in the United States automatically. We make that decision on whether we feel they're in the interest of the United States or they pose a danger to the United States. So both sides are right, and all Mr. Rubio is saying is, Mr. Khalil, as the spokesman for Columbia University Apartheid Divest, has on numerous occasions supported groups that committed vandalism, that harassed Jews, and most importantly have called for the destruction of Western civilization and glorified a group that is designated by the U.S. State Department as a terrorist group. Now, he may deny that, but it's on record. Marco Rubio and the State Department put it in a pretty good way. They said something along the following lines, and I'm paraphrasing. If in 2022, when this Algerian citizen wanted to come to the United States as a guest and use our educational facilities to get a degree, and he had just said the following, I plan while I'm at Columbia to be part of the Columbia University Apartheid Divest Group, and I will condone or participate in takeovers of particular halls and facilities on the campus to prove my point or to advocate my position, which is to alienate, ostracize Israel. And if it comes up that there is another war in the Middle East, I will side with Hamas, a known terrorist organization, as the State Department has defined it. Do you really think that we would allow that visa to be issued? And the answer is no. So yes, he can say everything he wants, but his activity has consequences. It wasn't what he said, but it was what he did. And he now gets his wish. He can go back to the Middle East and be a strong advocate for Hamas in closer proximity to it. Thank you very much. This is Victor Davis Hanson from the Daily Signal.
So how do we feel about that, guys? Some people feel like it's harsh. I'm not going to lie. When I reacted to Marco Rubio, before I did, some people felt like, hey, he is being a little bit harsh, you know, like this guy has never been in trouble before, even if we have things about the organization he's been a part of and the terror or the violence they've caused. He himself has not done that. And I said that that was a great point. However, I agree with Victor Hanson here that Marco Rubio was just simply saying, listen, there's no way. If this person would have came here and said, listen, I'm applying for this visa because I would like to be a student at the University of Columbia, and oh, by the way, while I'm there, I'm going to join a pro-Palestine group that harasses Jews, and I'm going to break onto campuses and go into random halls and refuse to leave and cause all this ruckus. Do you really think we would have let that person into the country? He's like, no, we wouldn't have. At least I hope we wouldn't have, he said. And that was kind of a shot to the last administration because they were letting pretty much everyone in. So Marco Rubio is right. And Victor Hanson is very right at this point where he says, like, you know, Mr. Khalil does reserve the right as a resident to say what he wants, and the United States reserves the right to not renew his visa, not allow him to stay in the country. And I think the reason why it seems hard is because we really haven't seen a president or administration maybe crack down like that to the point where we just see some maybe anti-Semitic rhetoric and then a person is being deported. Maybe it has happened before, but it was a larger incident. This one seems like, hey, the guy was just protesting, but apparently because of past incidences, it's been taking a little bit direct. So some people are not the happiest about it at all. So we're going to switch gears real quick, guys, and we're going to go over to the Democrats. I just wanted to show you guys a small fun clip to end our Friday night live with, and just see how Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries reacts to the media when he is asked a simple question about the unity of the Democratic Party. Oh, yeah, and shout out to my man Unskippable. Like, I love this channel. I don't want to just say my man because he could literally be running it with his wife or his girlfriend. So, shout out to Unskippable. They have 34.7 thousand subscribers on their channel. They cover conservative, liberal, all types of different news to a great extent. It kind of has a comic book effect to it. That's why I've always liked it. But you guys go check out Unskippable when you get a chance. This is where our clip is coming from tonight. So it says Hakeem Jeffries is getting roasted right now and he is not handling it well.
Have been united in their opposition against this continuing resolution. But that's it.
So the reporter says House Democrats have been united in rejecting this continuing resolution. And the comic says, Together they can only do all sorts of nonsense like this. Ha ha.
But that's a different position that we're hearing from Senate leadership. How does this not play into those accusations that Democrats are not unified?
So she said that's a different, like Democrats have seemed to be unified in rejecting this CR, continuing resolution, but it seems like that's not the case with higher ranking leadership. So how does that not signify that there is no unity within the Democratic Party? And the clip says, I wonder what he'll answer.
I see.
How that remain very unified? Let me yield to Catherine Clark and Pete Aguilar.
He said, House Democrats remain very unified. Let me yield to his two constituents. So I thought that was the poorest answer I've probably seen Hakeem Jeffries give today. It says, haha, is he really just going to leave total defeat? Yeah, that answer was kind of crazy. I mean, House Minority Leader, and you're being asked a question, hey, like, we're hearing things about higher ranking members, upper leadership, maybe not agreeing with some of you guys with the CR. Like, what's going on with that? Does that not solidify that there is no unity within the Democratic Party? And he just says, House Democrats remain unified. I yield to my constituents. He said their name, but I know it was, I think, Kate and Pete. So I'm just thinking to myself, wow, Hakeem Jeffries, like, that's how you answer a question, huh?
But what about the party itself? I mean,
You asked the question.
we're hearing two different messages.
You asked the question, can we answer it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So she asks, what about the party itself? And he says, you asked the question. He said, you asked the question. Can we answer it? And then the clip says, he must have been offended by that question. Haha. I love watching stuff like that.
Yes, but we're hearing two different questions. Can we answer?
Yeah, and then it just says, okay, Hakeem's really offended. And he was. You can tell that he was really offended. And I thought to myself, wow, Hakeem is he's starting to get a little bit stressed out there. And I think it probably was because of the position Chuck Schumer took, ranking member Chuck Schumer took. And he's like, yeah, listen, if it's true that what Matt Moore said, that Chuck Schumer started to realize that the American people were paying attention to what the Democrats were doing. So if the government were to shut down, it actually was not going to be blamed on the Republicans or President Trump's cabinet. It was going to be blamed on the Democrats, because everyone that voted for President Trump understood what he was trying to do. They understood why President Trump was asking for the CR. President Trump talking about getting us till September, just until, they can do some more figuring out and have some more fraud and waste findings. So the people that voted for Donald Trump understand what he's doing. They're not as mad as the people who did not vote and are trying to make it seem like London Bridge is burning down. So with that being said, guys, we are at the last clip of the live stream. We are ending our live with a clip from Cliff. We always end our live with a clip from Cliff. Well, if you get a chance, go check his channel out. I believe he is at 630,000 subscribers now. He is flying, man. And he does his Christian content in the form of YouTube shorts. I think he does an excellent job articulating them and getting them out this way. It gives me an opportunity to share my faith in Jesus Christ with you guys at the end of every single live stream. So we're going to jump right in. Today's title is Not Liking God After Reading the Bible Cover to Cover. So he's going to go over a podcast host has a guest on, and they are talking about this woman who read the Bible from cover to cover. And, she said she felt like she thought she would be elated and really happy and walk away with all of this stuff. And she's like, she just didn't. She was kind of just not pleased. So let's jump right in.
You got done reading through the entire Bible and didn't like God. This is wild.
The first time I read through scripture, my pastor's answering my questions along the way. I finished, and you would think I would feel elated. Like, I did it. I finished reading the whole Bible. Yeah. And I didn't. I was heartbroken because I read it cover to cover and believed it was true. All of it. I believe all this is true. All this is God's word. This is God revealing himself to us. And I didn't like him. And my pastor said, Okay, I have a new challenge for you. I've walked with you through the scriptures for a year. I've seen the kinds of questions you ask. I've seen the kinds of things you're looking for. I know the lens you're reading scripture through. My new challenge for you is read it again and stop looking for yourself. Start looking for God. What does he love? What does he hate? What motivates him to do what he does? You're reading this book like it's about you. It's for you, but it's not about you. It's about God. That was when things changed, was on my second trip through scripture. And I was halfway through the Old Testament and I fell in love. Like I fell in love with the person of God.
You got done reading through the entire Bible and didn't like God. This is wild.
The first time I read through
And that's what it takes sometimes, guys. I'm not gonna say you need to be like this lady and read through the entire Bible cover to cover, because that would be challenging for a lot of people. Just simply because depending on what type of translation you're trying to read from, it can be those things where I hear people say, "I'm trying to understand the Bible, but it sounds like Shakespeare," and I have to remind them that the Bible's older than Shakespeare. So it's just a funny thing. Choose a good translation, and it's possible to do that, but you don't have to do what this lady did. But I understand what she's saying. I think her pastor gave her great advice when he said, you're reading the book and you're looking for yourself. Read the book and you look for God. So can I understand why she might have felt sad or not liked God after reading the Bible cover to cover? Sure, I could, because it depends on what heart posture you begin to read the Bible with, right? And most people don't understand this. Reading the Bible is not the same exact thing as like me picking up, this magazine right here and reading it, or like me picking up, I don't read Dr. Seuss, at least not anymore, but like me picking up a book by, an author and just reading it, and not a book that's considered, the Bible, or a book that has been God breathed. So it's different in that way. And that's why you have to approach it in a much different way. Really in a humble way, in a way, I would say, if someone's like, what are some key ways a person should approach the Bible who's never read it? I would just say definitely in a spirit of humility, but just very curious, just wanting to know, who is this God that has known you and created you and knows more about you than even you know. So that's kind of the way that it should be approached. But some people do not approach the Bible like that. Some people learn the Bible, unfortunately, to weaponize it. Some people learn the Bible just so they can have knowledge and then outsmart other people. And that's unfortunate, but it does happen. It happened in Jesus's time, so we shouldn't expect anything different. But I just think it's great that her pastor told her to give it another shot, and this time look for God, because the Bible is, it's not about you, like it actually is about God, and that's a real thing. You learn a lot about him as a person. You learn a lot about his personality, and what drives him, and what could make him sad. And people think that you can't know God to that extent and in that way, but it's actually very possible. It's very possible. And I hope that you guys actually get the opportunity to know Jesus in the same way that I do. I hope everybody does who doesn't, because that's how we get to heaven, right? We all want to get to heaven, but we don't want to die to do it. We're all going to punch the death card. No way around that. Everybody's punching that card. So it's good to know who Jesus is right now, and to commune with him, and to love him, and to spend your lifetime with him. But nonetheless, he'll take you whenever you're ready to come. So with that being said, guys, remember, you can always fast forward to the end of the live stream to find the Christian clip. That's usually where I will put it at, unless there is a certain day where I'm just doing something different, maybe something special to show you guys, and I might have it one in the front, one in the back, who knows. But normally it's usually at the back of the live stream. So guys, with that being said, it's been cool hanging out with you on this late Friday night. I got done before midnight because I didn't try to have my wife kill me. So until next time, guys, which will be tomorrow, we will be on pretty early in the afternoon. I want to say I'll probably hop on around 2. And that seems to be a good time for me. And if I end up live streaming something before that, then that's when I hop on later. So until next time, guys, which is tomorrow, what I always say, take care of yourselves, take care of one another, love yourselves, love each other, and be peaceful. Peace.